Yale Brothers, episode 60.
60.
Time in this bag of bones. I'll be raising up a ruckus till they're dragging me
Well, hello, everybody. My name's Chris.
And I'm Roger, and we're the Yale Brothers. Happy to be here again.
Yes, indeed, and happy to be offering you our 60th episode. And boy, do we have a great... we're going to finish up our conversation with Cidny Bullens, part 2.
That is absolutely true. And what you just heard was a song called Lucky for Me from Cidny's 2020 album, Walkin Through This World.
Yep, great album. Man, that's a rock and roll number right there, isn't it?
Yes, and what a great chat we had last time. I'm sorry we had to cut it short, but now we're back.
Good, we get to hang out with Sid a little more.
I love it.
Yeah, man.
I'm just glad he's willing to do it, and that's awesome. Sid is a 2-time Grammy nominee with 9 albums spanning more than 40 years. Chris, last week it blew my mind, and we had to start with the fact that he was a backup singer for Elton John.
Sure.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy, all right.
And he's got 2 lead vocals on the Grease movie soundtrack. And, And he's 1/3 of a group called The Refugees with fellow singer-songwriters Wendy Waldman and Deborah Holland.
Man, that's some songwriter royalty right there. I almost said songwriter royalties. Let's hope for the best.
Yeah, I thought that's
may they be piling in, but that's songwriter royalty right there, man.
I love it. And for part 2, we're glad to have Sid back. Wow.
Well, so shall we bring him on to the show?
Yes, please.
All right. Here's our part 2 interview conversation with Cidny Bullens.
Sid, that was a rockin' tune.
should
Lucky
say
for
so.
me.
Love it.
Lucky for me, man.
Hey, by the way, welcome back to the show, my friend.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh God. Yes. Welcome back to the show,
Hey,
Sid.
thank you. I feel like we're friends now.
Yeah, me
You
too.
know, it's like, I'm going to be popping over to the house for a meal pretty soon.
Anytime.
Anytime.
Come on.
In fact, I wish you were here in person, as I said when we first met.
Me too. I mean, hopefully we'll get back to that. I some things I don't miss in person, but this kind of thing I do. And of course I miss playing gigs, but maybe we'll get back to that at some point too.
Absolutely. So yeah, what is speaking of that, what is the situation? It's still shut down, or what's the
Well, it's not so much that it's shut down. I mean,
Yeah.
some of my friends are out there playing and some aren't.
Yeah.
It depends on them personally, what they feel is safe for them, or some of them have tours that I have one friend who had a tour scheduled all through the spring and then can't postponed it till the fall, and that's been happening over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Or they go to one and then say no, we can't go to the others because there's a spike or something.
Oh, yeah.
So it's individual, but for me, I haven't, because I started writing my memoir a year ago. Actually, I did start writing it a year ago, but
Yeah.
then I took a big pause until I got a book deal. And then I went, oh shit. Oops, excuse me.
That's good.
Now I
Oh.
gotta,
Go ahead.
can I say that?
Yes.
Now I
Yes.
gotta write the thing,
Oh, yeah.
so,
Whoops.
but anyway, so I've been ensconced in that. And honestly and truly, I don't know how. I know that some of my musical colleagues can walk and chew gum at the same time. But for me, I'm just so ensconced in writing the thing, and I'm writing it. I can write. I am a writer. I'm a pretty good writer.
Yeah.
So I am doing it by myself, and I'm just immersed,
Oh, I get it.
completely and totally immersed in it. So I'm not planning on doing anything until this is turned in, which is about 3 months from now.
Well, very good. It's like a kid with a homework assignment.
Do you have
Exactly.
do you
A
have
term paper, a
term-
very long term paper.
Just wait till the night before. You'll be all right.
That's awesome. And do you have a projected publication date?
I do. It's going to be 2023. It won't be far into the year, but I don't want to get too specific because things change in this pandemic world. But the publisher has told me that advanced sales should be available this fall.
Okay, so for now,
Beautiful.
that's what's happening for now. Yeah.
Beautiful. And in light of what we're talking about, a pandemic, and wishing you were here in person, the HGTC Addiction and Recovery Series is this the second year in a virtual setting, and you appeared February 24th, yesterday.
Yes.
How did it work out in the virtual setting? How's the Casey doing over there? What was it like?
Casey is
King.
great. I love him, Casey King. And I'm really grateful that he's doing this kind of thing. I watched a bunch of them. He sent me some links to some of the prior speakers, and some of whom I knew of, and a couple I've met, or maybe one so far that I've seen I met years ago. No friends of mine, but people that I know of, and they were just incredible. And being someone in recovery for as many decades as I have been, it's always an honor and a privilege to share my own experience, strength, and hope with people, whether they're in a 12-step recovery program or not, or whether they are maybe thinking that they might have a problem with drugs or alcohol or anything else, or not.
Right on.
Because it is, everyone is touched by someone in their sphere,
Without a doubt.
either family or friends or friends of family or whatever it happens to be, with someone who has some kind of addiction. And I mean, listen, we know, we're sitting here, the three of us, knowing that in this particular time, also in space, in our country, in our world, it's really stressful. And so if you have any predilection to any kind of addiction, me, it's ice cream, ice cream and tortilla chips, that's it. And I can do them together. I don't sprinkle the tortilla chips on the ice cream, but I can do one after the other immediately.
I got to keep it out of that. If I get it in the house, it's all over. And it is in the house.
Oh my God. That's all sweet and savory.
It is in the house, I've made trips. I don't want to divert too far, but
all right, man.
I literally have made trips in blizzards to get a frigging pint of ice cream, not a quart, because if I got a quart, it would be gone. So you got to get a pint so that at least you know that you're limited in quantity.
Know thyself.
Yeah, I have my own addiction.
That's fair enough.
And my own predilection. So anyway, Casey's wonderful. The series is wonderful. I really wish I could have been there in person, and I do hope that at some point, I'll go east and meet you guys and all.
Oh God, be an honor.
Awesome.
Be an honor. We left off last time at just when you were getting into your Nashville experience, the Nashville era, I would say. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about the phone call you got from Don Was before you went out, and the Roy Orbison tributes and all that.
Right.
But we kind of left it off there. And now we know, we know you live there now, and you've lived there, what, many years?
No, this is my third. I've lived here now in Nashville for 2 years, but I had lived here twice before. I never let go of a property in Maine. I still have a little property in Maine. That's my home base. And that's where I kept going back to from Nashville or vice versa, So I've lived here 3 times. Nashville, since 1990, Nashville is when I first started coming here on a regular basis. Nashville has been my second home, period. And I've had places here over the decades. But this is my third time as a resident, meaning I have my license says Tennessee on it. I have Tennessee plates, as Tennessee. John Hyatt would say.
Yeah, and, man, I was going there.
And we just got new ones too. So I live here, and it is my second home, and I just feel a connection here creatively, even in the pandemic. Of course, it's all changed, or it did change. It's getting back. So yeah, I'm here now. But do you want me to go back to when I first started in here, or what's your question?
The question was a little bit of a timeline from the Roy Orbison tribute to move to Nashville, and then you started working with other singer-songwriters almost immediately, am I guessing?
Yes. So I just to back up just a second for your listeners.
Yeah, please do.
The Roy Orbison tribute for the homeless, because there were 2. There was one in '88, which was black and white, which I was not involved with.
Yes.
That was a TV special.
I remember it.
The one that I was involved with and invited to be a part of was February 24th, 1990. And which was also my daughter's 5th birthday back then. Was her birthday yesterday.
Oh,
Jessie.
God.
And she would have been 37.
God.
And but anyway, so that was at Universal Amphitheater in Los Angeles, and I was invited to do it. I don't even know how I got on the thing. There were several people involved who knew me, and I got to do, I can't remember what I said last time, so cut me off, but I did the Pretty Woman. Did I talk about that?
Yes, you did. That's awesome.
Okay, so I did Pretty Woman with the all-female band of many stars, and which was a privilege. But then Don Was called me and asked me to do if I had a solo song I could do. And I did a song I had just written called Send Me an Angel.
Yes.
And
a
solo. Well, I did it with David Mansfield, my wonderful, one of my best friends who plays multi-instrumentalists, and you can look him up, David Mansfield. He's everywhere. But anyway, So we did that, and that song propelled some of the artists who were involved, Emmylou Harris, Radney Foster, Bill Lloyd, several others, to come up to me and say, hey, why don't you go to Nashville? Maybe you should go to Nashville. And at that time, I had basically given up on my rock and roll career. My 1989 album had, bombed with MCA Records, not because of me, I don't think. Of course, I wouldn't think that anyway, but because of the promotion department just didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I was really that was in February of 1990, and so the seed was planted. And in October of 1990, I threw my guitar and my bicycle, because I was a runner and a biker.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm still a biker. I don't run so much anymore.
Yeah.
And but I threw my bike in the car, my sneakers and my guitar, and I drove. At that time, we were living in Connecticut, to Nashville, having made some meetings with some prominent people at BMI, which is my performing rights organization.
Yep.
And called Radney Foster and Bill Lloyd. And I can't remember if I called Emmylou at that point, but she comes in a little bit later into the story. And I ended up writing that week. I got there, and that week I wrote a song with Radney Foster. I wrote a song with Bill Lloyd. Roger Sovine, who was then head of BMI, took me around to every studio and had lunch with this person and that person, and Radney and Bill introduced me to other. And within the first week, I thought, oh my God,
Man.
I was, LA was a place where, what's your last hit? What have you done for me lately?
Yeah, sure.
Even as a songwriter. I mean, I went out there and tried after the fiasco of my MCA album, which was my eponymous album,
Right.
Cidny Bullens.
Right. Gotcha.
Never knew that word until then.
Yeah.
And after the failure of that, I thought, I'm old. I'm in my late 30s. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen anymore. That dream is over. So to go to Nashville and to have them accept me immediately and say, yeah, we'd love some fresh air, some fresh breeze, some fresh blood, whatever you want to call it, to come in. And at that time in the early 90s, in 1990 and going forward, if anybody follows country music, there was a kind of a plethora, an emergence of new sounds. Garth Brooks, Trisha Yearwood, Susie Boggess, others who were kind of not traditional country. They were coming in with a little bit more honest lyrics, if you will, or more emotional standpoints. And I mean, there was still the blood and the beer and the mama, but which exists even today.
Sure.
But there was this new approach, and I became a part of that, and that was a huge gift to me.
I should say that's a beautiful blessing. Now, I guess it probably felt like you came home creatively then. Is that fair?
It is fair to say that, because writing the song Send Me an Angel, which I write a whole chapter about in my book. I just finished it because it leads me to Nashville.
Gotcha.
When I wrote that song, and please, again, stop me if I said this the last time. When I wrote that song, just go like this. Just do the neck thing, and I'll get it.
Okay.
He's doing it. He's putting his hand up to his neck.
Yeah, but it's cool. It's cool. Because someone may not have caught it, and it's good to have the recap.
Well, what I was going to say was I wrote that song, and I realized that I only wanted to write songs that were that I could play by myself without a band.
Yeah, we got that.
Okay, good. So anyway, so it was going back to my roots, because I used to sit in my bedroom at 14, 15, 16 years old and write songs on my guitar. And it was kind of the same kind of thing where I was coming back to just writing for myself. But being in Nashville, I also learned how to craft. I learned how to craft a song.
Sure.
And not in the way of having it be really, a light thing where it wasn't emotional,
Right.
but that it was like putting together words and music in a way that was not just from my instincts.
Gotcha.
And
I see that.
and so it was a really learning experience, and I also made some great friends, and that lasted. Let me just put a period on that, from 1990 to 95.
Sounds like you're supposed to be there.
And please forgive me if I'm jumping into this because this is a sensitive.
Please jump.
You lost your daughter Jessie to Hodgkin's at 11 years old. To understand.
That's correct. Yeah.
I am so sorry, and it was her birthday yesterday. That's
Yes.
yes. God
Thank
rest
you.
her. This is 1996.
Yeah. Yes, she did, I won't go into the whole story, but just to say she died of complications from Hodgkin's lymphoma, and on March 23rd, 1996, and changed my life.
I can only imagine.
No words, Sid. A song emerged from that unspeakable tragedy, somewhere between heaven and earth.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about
Sure.
how? I don't know if. How
Well, that's what those are my words. I believe that song emerged from my being is what I've said again, and that line is so true because I did not pick up my guitar for 3 months after her death. I have another daughter, Reed, who was 13 at the time of Jessie's death. Jessie had just turned 11 3 weeks before she died, and Reed was 13, and so I had another child to take care of, and I won't go into the whole personal thing with my situation, but I hadn't picked up my guitar for 3 months. I just didn't, and one day I saw it, and I picked it up, and I picked it up really only what I tell people is I needed to have something familiar and tangible in my hands. It was just something that I knew, because I no longer knew anything about my world, except that I had a child to take care of, and another child was gone, vanished. And so I picked up the guitar, and the song Somewhere Between Heaven and Earth emerged from my being. That's the way I put it. I didn't write it, so to speak.
Got you. I got you.
And it came out almost whole. It started, I can't even, it's not like I even remember writing it. I just remember sitting down and I started strumming my Martin D35 and it came out. And when it came out, and I'll just say this and then I'll go into what happened after. When it came out of me, and there was a song, I was horrified. I was horrified that I had just written a song about the death of my own child. And the next thought was, okay, if I were a painter, I'd be painting. If I were a poet, I'd be writing a poem. If I were, any other creative thing, I'd be doing whatever they do. I mean, and I'm a songwriter. So this is what I'm doing to express my grief. And, but I also felt this tiny, tiny, tiny little spark within me, that creative spark. And that was it. I thought, okay, I've written a song. I didn't play it for anybody. Well, I did. I came to Nashville at some point and played it for one friend of mine, Kai Fleming, who is a wonderful hit songwriter who had many country hits in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
Wonderful woman, was a good friend of mine. And she said, that's the best song you've ever written. And kind of encouraged me. And so 3 months later, I wrote another song called In Better Hands. And 3 months after that, I wrote another song called 1,000 Shades of Grey. And after I wrote the third one, I thought, okay, I guess I'm going to write some songs about this. I'm not going into the rest of how the grieving process works and any of that. We're just talking about the music at this point.
Right.
And so I came to Nashville again with those 3 songs, and I gathered some of my musician friends together, and I said, I need to record these. And I didn't have any reason to record them. It was, again, something I was familiar with, something I knew how to do, something that gave me some framework within to live.
Like an anchor or something.
An anchor and do something. So I came to Nashville and I recorded those 3 songs. A few months later, I wrote another one, The Lights of Paris, after I went to Paris with my best school friend. And I'd never been there before. And I came home and I wrote a song called Lights of Paris. And then I wrote another song. And then I wrote another song. And suddenly, you may know the name Rodney Crowell.
Sure do.
Came into being. He was an acquaintance of mine, not a close friend, but an acquaintance. And we'd had talks and he knew about Jessie. And we had some talks about it after her death. And Beth Nielsen Chapman, who is a wonderful singer-songwriter, very close friend of mine, had lost her husband before Jessie died to cancer in his 30s.
Oh, man.
And after Jessie died, she reached out to me. And so anyway, we became closer. And she said, you need to talk to Rodney. And I called Rodney up. And I said, if I come to Nashville and play you these songs, will you help me? I didn't know what kind of help. I didn't know anything. I just said, I just need you to hear these and tell me, what should I do? And I came to Nashville again. I was living in Maine at the time. Jessie died in Maine, and I'd been living there for years by this time. 1990, actually, we moved to Maine. And he said, you have to make an album. Now, I'd already recorded the 3 songs back, So I had 3 recorded already. He said, you have to make a whole album. He said, but you have to make an entire album about Jessie. You can't put any filler in there. You can't put another song that you wrote 10 years ago in there. You have to have it. Well, that meant I had to write 3 more songs because I had 7 songs. I had the 3 that I'd recorded, and I'd written 4 more that I felt were part of the package. That's a terrible way to say it.
No,
just came out of just part of these moments of grief and honest songs that came through me, not by me.
Wow.
It's a distinction,
And so I thought, there's no friggin' way I'm coming up with 3 more songs that have as much emotional power as these 7 that I've already written. Well, long story short, I had kind of an experience one day where Jessie came to me. I'm not a woo-woo person. My wife is. I'm not.
Okay.
In fact, she keeps trying to, hammer it in, be a little more woo-woo, for crying out loud.
Oh my gosh.
And but she came to me in her way, and I wrote 2 songs in one day, and the next day I wrote another, and I had the 3. And it became the album Somewhere Between Heaven and Earth, on which Lucinda Williams sings, on which Bonnie Raitt sings, on which Brian Adams sings, which Rodney Crowell produced 3 of the tracks. My friend Tony Berg, who is a great producer in Los Angeles, co-produced with me 3 of the tracks.
Phenomenal.
And it became, and then there's a whole story, I put it out as a charity record, to benefit the state of Maine children's cancer program. I didn't have a record deal. I paid for it. Friends did me favors. I went into the studio. I did all the stuff. I hired everybody.
Yeah.
You know, and I had a whole album and I just was pressing it up for charity. And then a friend of mine took it he was a record company, or had been a former record company guy, and took it to Danny Goldberg, who had just started Artemis Records. And Danny called me up and said, I want to put out Somewhere Between Heaven and Earth.
That's the Artemis connection. I was listening a little bit on Spotify and I saw Artemis somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
And Artemis, I was there. I think I was their first signing, and then Steve Earle, but it might have been Steve Earle first and then me. But anyway, They licensed Somewhere Between Heaven and Earth and put it out. And it became two things. It became a tool for grieving parents and people who'd lost loved ones, or had gone through, because the songs were relatively universal. You didn't know it was about the death of my child. I actually had a hit single from that album called Better Than I've Ever Been.
Wow.
Anyway, it became a tool, a useful tool for people, which was really incredibly important for me, which sustained me for 15 years in doing concerts for people on this subject.
Yeah.
But it also became my biggest commercial album, which was weird.
Isn't it
my
funny?
biggest seller.
And
Wow.
And you know what
Congratulations.
I love? The spirit moved you, and it happened, and you weren't trying. It just came out of you, and I think that's the magic happening. That's fantastic. I love that story.
I do too. Thank you.
It's a great tribute to your daughter.
Well, that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
That was the whole point.
But-
the whole point was to keep her name, to have people know who she was.
Yeah.
And that was my whole desire. It wasn't about me. But just one other point. That album was what brought me back into the music business
Isn't that
as
so-
an artist.
That's incredible.
Wow, Sid. Tell us about The Refugees with Wendy Waldman and Deborah Holland. Is that too? Wait a minute. Is that too weird?
No, it's not. You know, the thing is, thank God for The Refugees, because thank God for Wendy Waldman, who I met in 1991 in Nashville when she was living here, and I met Deborah Holland in Los Angeles in 1990 or 91 when I was out there. They didn't know each other at all. And by the way, Wendy Waldman, you can look them both up, wrote Save the Best for Last by Vanessa Williams, but she was also an artist on Warner Brothers Records back from 1972 on, as one of that California crowd, you know, with Carla Bonoff, and she worked with Linda Ronstadt, has some wonderful albums, and has continued to this day to release albums. And she's just an incredible songwriter and singer.
For sure.
Deborah
for
Holland. Sure. I'm sorry, what?
Oh, for sure. I agree.
Yeah. And Deborah Holland was the lead singer and songwriter of Animal Logic in the late 80s and early 90s, which Animal Logic was three people: Deborah Holland, Stuart Copeland of The Police.
Oh, yeah.
And Stanley Clark, the great jazz bass player.
Oh, what a
Holy
trio.
Yeah. So that was Animal Logic. They had a couple of records out. But anyway, they didn't know each other. I knew both of them. They didn't know each other until they got together, because Deborah was a professor at the time and asked Wendy, had nothing to do with me, asked Wendy back in 2006 to come and do one of her classes as a, guest artist. And they knew each other very peripherally. And they got together, and they got together and started doing some, things together on, just going in the round kind of Nashville stuff together.
Right. Cool.
And with other songwriters. And they came to Nashville in 2006 to do a songwriters festival. And I was living here at the time, and I was doing the songwriters festival, and they both discovered that they both knew me, and so they came to see me play, and I went to see them play, and we had breakfast one day, and they said to me, hey, why don't we do something together, the three of us?
Incredible.
And I'm like, okay, and I don't know what I was thinking at the time, but I like the idea, but I didn't know if I wanted to be in a trio, and I didn't, whatever.
Yeah.
And
I get it.
so finally Deborah kept badgering me, and I went out to LA because they both lived in LA at the time. Deborah now lives in Vancouver, Canada, and has been there for 11 years. But I went out there, and the minute we sang together, it was magic. The second. And they said, I know, let's be called the California Song Girls. And I said, now look at me. I have a mustache. Do you think I wanted to be the part of the California? I didn't have a mustache then, but I wanted one.
Right. I would tell her that's awesome.
Oh, that's too funny.
And I said, no, there is no friggin' way I'm going to be in a band called the California Song Girls. First of all, I live in Maine.
Yeah.
Or no, I lived in Nashville.
Oh,
at the time.
right.
I don't live in California. So I did, but I don't now. I did way back in the day.
So that was shot down.
And second of all, I don't feel like a girl, so no.
Yeah,
and
fair
so
enough.
I said, how about the Refugees? And we Googled it, and there was no band that we could see.
That's
called
crazy.
The Refugees.
Oh,
We've now found out there's a Tom Petty cover band.
Yeah,
called The Refugees.
Oh,
but anyway,
I see.
So we became the Refugees. And let me just back up for a second and say that the Refugees, not only musically were important, and this just ties into Jesse just for a second.
Yeah.
And what it is about me. The Refugees pulled, now being a grieving parent is a long process. It never goes away.
Oh Lord. I
it just shifts and changes, but it never goes away. But the Refugees, it was like the sun coming out musically for me. Now I loved writing, and I was writing in Nashville, and I was doing stuff, and I made 2 more albums after Somewhere Between Heaven and Earth. I made Neverland in 2001, and I made Dream 29 in 2005. They were both good albums, co-produced by my favorite person in the world, Ray Kennedy, who's still one of my best friends. I shouldn't say that. I have several favorite people in the world.
Fair enough.
But he's one of them.
Yeah.
And a true genius. And they were great albums. John Hyatt, Emmylou Harris, other people on those records. Delbert McClinton, Elton John played piano on the title track of Dream 29. So I had
really? Sid, that was a bullet point, and thank you for covering that. That's awesome. I heard it.
Something.
Yeah, Chris, you need to calm down.
John Hyatt I'm a huge John Hyatt fan.
Yeah. Yeah, John and I haven't seen each other for a long time, but there was a point where we hung out a little bit, did some things. His wife and I are still friends, and
crazy.
More Facebook since the pandemic. Everything is at a distance these days.
Yeah.
But John, I am also a huge John Hyatt fan.
Yeah, phenomenal.
And he influenced me as well. So, and Steve Earle, by the way, was on the Neverland album, and I'm a big Steve Earle fan too.
Me too.
And Ray, by the way,
shit.
Ray Kennedy, my co-producer, is the Twang Trust twins, or whatever they're called, Twang Trust.
Oh, right, of course.
Yeah, and Ray just produced the new Lucinda Williams album, and he produced Car Wheels on a Gravel Road. And, it goes on and on and on. So anyway, I've been surrounded by some pretty wonderful, incredible people. But the Refugees, because of the camaraderie, because of the harmonies and the camaraderie of those two, and oh my God, we laughed so hard. We still do. So guess what? Since you asked about the Refugees.
Yes.
On April 16th, I'm going out to Los Angeles, and we're making a new record.
Oh,
I was going to say Far Out. That's awesome. That's so awesome.
So the Refugees will have a new record out, hopefully in the fall. And that's all I'm going to say about that at the moment. But we good
luck with it.
We took a hiatus. I had to change genders, and they had to do some other stuff. So
right.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So I bet when you get back together, you don't miss a beat, I'm sure.
No, we don't. I was out there this summer and stayed with Wendy while I was helping to promote the documentary I'm in, and we don't miss a beat. We and Deborah and I are in touch. They're two of the friends. I am so blessed. Let me just say off music.
Yeah.
That I am so blessed with the most incredibly supportive friends and family that I could possibly have. I'm not easy to be with.
Is that true? Is that true? Is that true, Sid? Is that true?
My transition was not easy on people, and I've just been blessed with supportive people who've stuck by me.
Man, doesn't that mean everything? That means everything.
God bless you.
It does.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, incredible.
That is incredible. It's incredible. Now, it begs the question from a journalistic point of view, how your transition impacts the refugees. But I guess before or tying this in, you started transitioning from female to male in 2011, correct?
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, I did. I didn't come out publicly until 2012, but I did start testosterone, a very low dose, because I didn't want my voice to change that much, and I also wanted to be able to reverse it if I got too afraid.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
But I did start in September of 2011. I changed my name in October. But I came out publicly in June of 2012 with an article in the Daily Beast.
Daily Beast.
I read it.
Daily Beast. But then you disappeared for a while. Somewhere I've read that you were working at an LL Bean in Maine for a little while.
Yes, I did. I was working at and funny because it does tie in with the refugees, because in 2012, in the fall of 2012, after I had come out, I had been on testosterone for about a year, so I didn't really look a lot different because I was on a very low dose, but I definitely had started to transition, and I had what we call top surgery back in May of 2012. But I still looked like Cindy. I still had hair. I didn't have it took me 7 years to grow the little, I shaved it a couple of weeks ago. So it takes about 4 weeks to grow in again.
Yeah, it's coming in good.
There you go.
I remember that. It's coming in
I
good.
don't have your genes.
Get a little closer. Get a little closer to the screen. Because last week he said
it's coming. It's
Yeah,
coming.
I don't have to get closer. I see it.
I see it.
Looking good.
So you'll see the pictures of me with a mustache. I just, on the sheer spur of the moment, shaved it off about 2 weeks ago, just because I thought, I'm just going to start again.
Why not?
And it does take a while. But anyway, so I was in 2012. I still looked like Cindy with all my hair.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any male features to speak of.
Yeah.
And and the refugees had a few gigs together, and we'd walk into a radio station or into a gig, and half the people would know that I changed my name to Cidny. Sid. I was Sid to everybody, but Cidny, in print.
Right.
And half the people wouldn't know.
Oh, that's a trip.
So as far as everybody knew, we were still three women, because don't forget, we had started in 2007.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I would walk into a radio station. These three lovely ladies are walking in, and it's not that I was offended. It wasn't that. I'm too old to be offended by certain things, and I do have an understanding of lack of knowledge and not ignorance, because that's a different thing. That's a different thing. But lack of perception or knowledge or just
information.
Whatever. And information. And so I wasn't bothered by the fact that they were, mocking me or anything, or had any ill intent. It was that I was not Cindy anymore, but I was not yet all of who Cidny was going to be.
Oh,
so
wow.
for me, it was I wrote a song about it on Walkin Through This World called Purgatory Road. You know,
I was just going to say,
I was in the middle of transition, which every trans person who does do a gender transition goes through. You're not quite one and you're not quite the other. And so I said to them after the last gig, we were in Chicago, and Wendy had some other stuff going on. Deb had some issues with one of her kids, and I was in the middle of transitioning, and we all just looked at each other and said, okay, let's just stop. And so we canceled the few gigs we had. This was in September. We had a few gigs in November. We canceled those. And I went home to Maine and I said, I'm hiding. I'm going into hiding until I feel that I can come out as Sid.
Like a cocooning.
And I don't mean come out.
No,
like,
I get you. No, just
I mean come out of my
emerge
into the world.
Yeah.
And so I got a job at the LL Bean warehouse.
What a trip.
Wow.
And that's a whole nother story, because I didn't know that my bosses from several different levels knew, because I was a big kind of, I don't want to even say a big fish in a little pond, but people in Maine, I was on TV. I did charity work. I did all the local stuff and, the local TV shows and stuff like that. So people knew who I was.
Yeah. So they're going to be checking you out.
But I still thought I was invisible.
Oh,
Sorry,
man.
I just hit my mic.
No, you're right.
So,
Can't worry about
so I went into LL Bean warehouse, and my boss, it turned out that a bunch of people knew who I was. They never said a word.
Oh my God.
And until I worked there for like a year and a half, by the way.
Wow. Okay.
And it was fantastic. It was great because I was just a person.
Right.
I was just there taking 50 pairs of socks out of a box on the bottom row. And then I'd go up and I'd get 17 lunch boxes from there. And then I'd go over and pick up, a couple of sweatshirts and whatever else, jackknives, whatever that LL Bean has in his warehouse, which is a lot, by the way.
I'm sure, man. That tripped me out.
I lost weight.
Walking around.
I got a Fitbit. I didn't need, to go to the gym.
Yeah, perfect.
So I worked at LL Bean and I disappeared until Deborah Holland called me and said, would you come to Canada with me? And this was February of 2014, and back me up. You don't have to do anything. Just back me up with guitar and do a couple vocals. I'm going to do some gigs.
I see.
And I did. And then we went on tour together, and I just backed her up. And God love her. God love my friends. Oh. They just eased me out. Eased me out. And the Refugees, just to cap that point about it used to be 3 women, and Wendy, we've done a couple of gigs since then, and Wendy just says, well, we're 2 women, and, and she jokes and says, and that person over there who's, she just makes some kind of joke about me.
Yeah. And
that's all fine, because we're all self-deprecating, and we can all do that.
Perfect.
And everybody knows now. You can't, I can't, nobody says, oh, is that a man or a woman anymore?
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
They loved you into it, man. That's great. Yeah.
Plus, I wrote my show while I was at LL Bean. I just wanted to tell you that.
Oh, that's cool.
I wrote my one-person show, Somewhere Between Heaven and Earth. I'm sorry. Somewhere Between Not an Ordinary Life.
Yeah.
Somewhere Between seems to be the theme of my life.
It's perfect.
But Somewhere Between Not an Ordinary Life and that's when I wrote the show. And by the way, met my wife, who was my solo show coach.
Oh, that's so
really
beautiful.
And director, and became my wife.
Tanya Taylor Rubinstein, 2018.
That's right.
Please, that's so
excellent.
We have a little bit about, you wrote the show, then you took it out on the road. Mm-hmm. What was that like? And then meeting Tanya, maybe it can all be melded together in a That's awesome. God almighty.
Yeah, so I was
great.
I was in Maine at LL Bean, and I knew I had wanted to write a one-person show for years, but I didn't know. I knew what the beginning was. It was going to be about Elton and Bob Crew and all my beginnings in LA and all my adventures and stuff.
Yeah.
And the middle was going to be Jesse's death and somewhere between heaven and earth and emerging from that and everything. But I didn't know what the end was. And then when I transitioned, I thought, oh, that's the arc of the story. The arc is starting in 1973 in Los Angeles, all of that, getting married, having kids, living in Westport, Connecticut, being just a regular married couple in Connecticut with 2 kids in the Montessori school.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
And then losing Jesse and what that brought to my life. The refugees have a little segment in the show, very short, but they're there because they're important.
Cool.
And then into my transition, but with going, and of course there are flashbacks in it. It's actually pretty well done, and it's multimedia too. There's video and pictures. But
I'm sure it's
awesome.
awesome.
Like it touched. I'm going to speak for you as well, Chris. It touched us. Just the trailer, the bit you have on your site.
Yeah,
how fantastic.
I did film it, but I filmed the first writing, and then I rewrote it a little bit. The show debuted in February of 2016 or January, and I guess it was February, and I did it through June of 2018 was the last time I did it. I'm probably going to do it again, by the way.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And
Excellent.
another rewrite, but I had to rewrite it a little bit. Most of it's the same, but what I did rewrite was important enough, and I never filmed it.
Oh God.
Yeah.
But so I don't have a film of it, but we'll film it next time. But anyway, Tanya, so I was on the internet because I knew I had all this material. I knew what I wanted. I knew the pictures. I knew the songs I wanted to have in it. And by the way, there are 8 live songs in the show, which create bridges from one theme to the next, or they accentuate a part of the show.
Yeah.
Nice.
They're all songs that I had written prior, but I was scanning the internet for ways to help me because I was a songwriter and I had all this material and I knew the pictures and I knew the songs and I knew the structure, but I didn't know how to put together 40 years worth of experience and 8 songs into a 90-minute production, stage production. How the heck do you do that?
Learning
I don't
curve.
know. So I went on the internet and I found all these courses, at the New School in New York and the this and the that. And I'm thinking, I can't go for a year to, every month to New York or a year and I just couldn't find anything other than books and things like that was. And when I use the word viscerally, I mean, that was immediately going to help me. That I really wanted to have some help that I could utilize right away.
Yeah.
So
sure.
Makes sense.
Suddenly this woman pops up, Tanya Taylor Rubinstein in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And she was what she called a solo show coach. And she offered a 4-day intensive. And she promised that at the end of the 4th day, you would have an outline for your one-person show. I call it a one-person show because I start out as a woman and I end up as a man.
Yeah.
So It's not a one-man show and it's not a one-woman show. It's a one-person show. It's also called a solo show. So she was a solo show coach, and she said, you will have an outline for your show when you leave here after 4 days. And I thought, perfect. I want immediate results.
Oh, hell yeah.
Awesome.
Right.
Oh my God.
That's great. I can handle that. And it was in Santa Fe, and I love Santa Fe. I had, traveled there several times. I played there several times with the refugees and on my own, and, beautiful place. And I thought, great, I'll take a few days. I'll go to Santa Fe. I'll work with this woman and I'll come back with an outline.
Oh, that sounds good.
And so I went and I did come back with an outline, and we worked on Skype, boys. Skype.
Okay, here we go. Here we go.
Yeah.
You've graduated now to Zoom, but
Thanks to you,
buddy.
Sid. Thanks to you.
Skype. We worked on Skype for about 15 months.
Yeah.
And then I did a live reading. My first reading of my show was going to be in Maine, and it was going to in the end of August in 2015. And guess what? She was dropping off her daughter to Boston University from New Mexico, where Chloe, her daughter, was starting her freshman year. And I said, hey, come up to Maine. And I wanted her to direct too, which I hadn't asked her yet.
I see.
Tanya. I wanted Tanya to direct my show because she also did that. And so I had finished writing it, obviously, with her coaching, but I wrote it, and she'd say, nah, you don't need that part, or, expand on this part, or, whatever, and help me create the show.
Wow.
So I was doing the first reading, and she made a decision, which she didn't usually do with her clients, to come up and see my first reading under the presumption that she might direct it. Yeah. And she came up, and let's just say that was when the idea formed that we might at some point get together. And it took a while.
Yeah.
But within about 6 months, we got together. And
fantastic. Yeah.
And then we got married. So I would say, well, we've been married 4 years. January 12th was our 4th anniversary. And so yeah, that's a whole thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just never know, folks.
No, that's incredible.
Well, then from marrying Tanya,
the
show, Cidny, please tell us about Walkin Through This World. It's awesome. Your 2020 album. How's that doing? And what's going on? What's the story behind it?
Well, Walkin Through This World, it was an album that I had to make. And I kind of like somewhere between heaven and earth. I wasn't sure how it was going to come about, but I knew after I had written the songs for Somewhere Between Heaven and Earth, and Rodney Crowell also came into the picture and said, you got to make an album. I realized after I transitioned that I was going to have to write about it. And I wanted to make a themed album about my transition, which Walking Through This World is themed. It's a little looser than Somewhere Between Heaven and Earth, being about my daughter and being a bereaved parent or grieving or whatever you want to call it. But Walking Through This World is themed around my transition, even though there's a couple of love songs to my wife and so on and so forth. But I hadn't written a song in a while before that album. And I had a couple that I had written early in my transition, Purgatory Road being one of them, which I wrote in 2012. I actually kind of rewrote it later, but I wrote the song in 2012. I also wrote a song called Little Pieces, which is the opening track. That was the first song I wrote after my transition in 2012. And so I had a couple, and I had some other songs that I had little threads to that are on there. But I knew I had to write an album. And so I moved to Santa Fe from Maine because my wife spent one winter in Maine and said, nope, that's not happening. So
that's that.
So we moved to Santa Fe.
Nice.
And that didn't last either. We're in Nashville.
Look at this.
Because that was a little too far away from my little grandchildren and other things for me. But we settled on Nashville, and we're happy here. So I did. I'll just say quickly that I was inspired after. There's a whole story which I'm not going to go into because we don't have time.
Okay.
About the gender line, and I'll just tell you the thread. There's a line in my show, my one-person show, about the gender line. So I'm just going to say that. I'm not going to say the line, but there's a line in there that states the gender line.
Okay.
What it is. that my daughter Reed said to me. And it's a very important line. So then I was filmed for a documentary feature called Invisible about Southern women, music written by Southern women. And I was a woman who wrote music in the South for a while. So,
yeah.
And the director and producer came to see my show in Nashville, my one-person show, and said, "We want you in the film." Okay, I'm a trans man now, but they wanted me in the film.
Yeah.
So anyway, they came up to film me. They saw the show in June of 2018 in Nashville. They came up to Maine in September of 2018, where I was living with Tanya. And actually, I was living in New Mexico, but I was back in Maine. And they filmed me. And the director said to me, "You need to write a song called The Gender Line." And I'm like, I literally rolled my eyes. I bit my tongue.
Wow.
But I was like, because here's the thing. I write love songs. I write songs about my life. I do not write songs about subject matter. I do not write political songs. I do not write protest songs. I'm not good at any of that. I'm not a preacher. I'm not going to preach to you. So to write a song called The Gender Line, which is so specific, I thought there is no way in hell. Just like I thought I couldn't write those other 3 songs, remember, in Somewhere Between Heaven and Earth?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, Jesse didn't come to me this time, but I did get inspired. So anyway, he said, "You've got to write a song called The Gender Line." And I thought, there's no freaking way I'm going to write a song. How can I fit in a story into 3 or 4 or 5 minutes that's not going to sound preachy, that's not going to sound glib, that's not going to sound, whatever.
Yeah.
Because I'm not that kind of songwriter. I write from, my heart, and my everything, is on my sleeve. You know where I am at any particular moment.
Yeah.
So on my way back to New Mexico, I had to drive my little Ford Ranger truck, which I'm still kicking myself that I sold. When I moved to Nashville. But anyway, it's another story.
You can't get them.
On my driving my truck from Maine to New Mexico, I couldn't get the notion of writing The Gender Line off my mind. I thought, all right, here's a director of a feature film asking me to write a song. What am I going to, and not only because he asked me, but because I don't know, it just kept sticking with me.
Yeah.
And I looked in the rearview mirror I'm driving on the interstate.
You got road.
I look in the rearview mirror, and the line comes in, "If you were me, what would you do?" You look in the mirror, and you're not really you. And I went, uh-oh.
There it is. There's the muse.
And I always have a pad of paper by me, somewhere tucked in the side of the seat or in the glove compartment, someplace. I have a little legal pad or a big legal, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And a pen. I always have a pen, and I write. And I start writing that. And by the time I got back to New Mexico, I had all the lyrics for the song, The Gender Line. And I wrote the music after, because I didn't have a guitar and I'm driving.
Yeah, right.
I had like a kind of a cadence, kind of a rhythmic kind of thing in my head, but I didn't have the music. So
Gotcha.
I wrote the music. And so that the reason I tell that story is because when I wrote the song, The Gender Line, I said, okay, I now know that I can write again, that my muse is not completely gone forever as a songwriter.
Clearly not.
And I knew I could write an album. And from that moment on, I went boom, 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 and started writing all the songs for The Gender Line, for Walkin Through This World.
So it opened the door. I got to say,
believable.
That song, it is from the heart, and there's no way around it. I mean, it's just perfect.
I love
that. Thank you.
I love it.
Thank you so much for saying that. I've had other people, including some of my songwriter friends, just like Kai Fleming said to me back in the day, Somewhere Between Heaven and Earth is the best song you've ever written. I've had some other songs since then that I think are as good, but
no doubt,
at least as pertinent. But The Gender Line is one of those songs that, again, I was just the vessel. I was just there, you know, and I happen to be that person who can write that song.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And have it be authentic. And that's the whole thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, the whole thing is about being authentic, and that's what I'm here for.
God bless you.
I get where you're coming from, and I certainly respect and appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
I'm going to say ditto again, but I can't let you go, just like I couldn't start without the Elton story. And this has nothing to do with Elton. These are two quotes that I've seen. I hope these are really you, that I have seen in interviews, like print somewhere. Maybe, do you have something? I'm not sure. I don't know where, but one is, if you live long enough, you get to have a chance to really become who you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
Beautiful.
And, you know, my daughter lived to be 11, but she was who she was.
Oh my God.
So it doesn't matter whether it's 11 or 71 or 62 or 59 or 46, you know, whatever it is, however long you live, 99, we get the chance. I mean, I think we all want to become who we are, and that goes back to being authentic.
Totally.
But I have been fortunate enough to live this long so that I could become all of who I am, which is what Walkin Through This World, you know, that's the song that said, I'm walking through this world as exactly who I am.
That was the first song that moved me before the gender line. But that, what you just said, sounded like a great close, and I'm not even sure if I want to use this quote, but you did have another quote. Now, is this you too, Sid? Who knew? You make a little change in gender and life falls into place.
That sounds right. I can't tell you. I don't know.
Okay, but
if I said that or not.
It was so beautiful. What you said about the first quote, I was hesitant to put that, but that's awesome. And one more question, because we'd like to play you out with Sugartown.
Oh, Sugartown is the love song on Walking Through This World to my wife. And it makes me cry even thinking about it, because I love singing it. Now, my wife and I are two different peas in two different pods, but you know, we have a purpose together, and
Amen.
It's personal and it's not personal. We are the sum of our. What's that quote? The we're greater than the sum of our parts.
Oh, right. Yeah. Oh, wow.
And for some reason, we're together. We were brought together, and that's a whole nother story. I'll tell you another time. But which has more to do with whatever else is going on that we don't know about.
Yes, indeed.
But anyway, yeah. So yes, Sugartown. I cry when I sing it.
I was going to ask you that.
Love singing it. She has been the most challenging, the most challenging thing that's come into my life.
That's phenomenal.
In a decade, other than my transition, since my transition.
Yeah.
And which was challenging and still is. But also the biggest gift, and talk about being authentic and being who you are. She is. And so the two of us together are quite a pair. And talk about being brave. I mean, let's put it where it is. She married a trans man.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not, I mean, we can walk down the street and people think we're just this old white. She's not old. I am, but she's not. She's younger than me. I robbed the cradle, but we walk down the street and we think we're just this normal white couple,
Sure.
married couple.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
Guess what? We're not.
Guess what?
We're white, but that's about it.
So check this out.
Oh my God.
You're being
Sid.
authentic together. That's awesome.
Yeah,
right.
that is
Yes.
awesome.
Yeah.
What a distinct pleasure.
Yes. Thank you, Sid.
For you to join us both times. And I can't thank you enough. It's
too.
just what an amazing story, an amazing person.
You guys are awesome. I think you're great. I do feel like, we're friends already.
Yeah,
and
I feel it.
we'll get together sometime. And I really am honored and appreciate that you've had me on your show twice, not once,
Well,
but made it
please.
a two-parter. And what you do for the community there with Casey and on your own with your podcast. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you
so
so
much.
much, Sid.
Thank you.
Holy crap. That was so awesome to get to speak to Sid not once, but twice.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, what a story.
Love talking to him, getting to know him.
Yeah, absolutely.
You guys should get to know him too and buy this book that's coming out that's going to be incredible. This is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yes.
Guys. I can't wait.
The book is called TransElectric, and it's due out in 2023, as Sid said earlier. And pre-orders will come, of course, sooner than that. But for everything Cidny Bullens, words, music, shows, other information, check out CidnyBullens.com.
Yep. All right. Thanks for being on the show, Sid. So we're the Yale brothers. My name's Chris.
And I'm Roger.
And I have a frog in my throat. So
Ribbit.
YaleBrothers@gmail.com.
Or you can find us on the antiquated social media, Facebook.
Yes, you can.
It would be funny if you had to look for something other than the Yale Brothers, but that's not the case.
What if we didn't tell you who we were and just say guess?
Yes.
All right. Well, love you all. We're the Yale brothers and rock and roll.
I got a problem with my thinking. My head wants to take me down when my motivation's shrinking. I know I gotta turn it around as I wander in the darkness. I hesitate to think out loud, but you're laying right beside me. Baby, take me to Sugartown. With me in your magic spell, pull me closer to your soul with your sweet lips upon my own. It makes me love you even more. In my momentary lapses, you dare me to dig down deep. Then you send me straight to heaven, like a prayer that you're saying on me. I can learn from my transgressions. Takes me a while to come around. All of time takes on perfection when you take me to Sugartown. My head wants to take me down. When my motivation's shrinking, I know I gotta turn